going to be teaching until yesterday about mid-morning, so a little underprepared based on previous times that I've stood. So feel free to chime in today. Yeah, you have anything you want to say? You blurt it out, and I will happily let you talk. So, per Bill's instructions, a lot of this will be borrowed from his sermon 16 years ago on this text. So if you have a good memory and were here 16 years ago, it may be a little familiar. I think that would only apply to maybe 3 of you, maybe. So, but we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5. And we've got a little out of order in the Sermon on the Mount here. So I'm going to back it up, and we're just going to read a little bit just to get the context back with where we're going, because I'm going to be skipping ahead into verse 38. But Michael, would you mind just to start at 17 and read through 42? Sure. Just to give us some context with where we're going.
17 through 42.
Mm-hmm.
Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. You've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you're offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly, I say to you, you will never get out until you've paid the last penny. You've heard it said that you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you. Do not refuse the one who would borrow from you.
Thank you, Michael. So we're going to be here starting in verse 36. You've heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. One of the great hallmarks of our country is that we we have certain rights. In our Declaration, it talks about the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Many have fought for our freedoms, and we're thankful for that. But we live in a day where many are trying to expand their rights: workers' rights, gay rights, homeowners' rights, renters' rights, prisoners' rights, children's rights. Everybody wants and feels entitled to their rights. I know my rights, you know. And when that self-interest, the self-interest, the self-absorption, that attitude, it characterizes human nature. And when that attitude dominates, the self-interest, always looking in on ourselves and what I deserve, what I want, true justice is replaced by vengeance and retaliation. Not that we can't defend ourselves or our property, or that we're to be doormats to the world, but when we're wronged, we're prone to retaliation when we're hurt. We want to lash out. This is a text that causes us to see the deceitfulness of our hearts. It exposes that selfish instinct to retaliate when we're personally wronged. When someone insults us, when somebody does something to us, we want to get back, right? And it's built into our culture. Chase, what happens when you get hit playing baseball?
Depends on who you ask.
What?
I tell my boys when I'm coaching, play it off, don't rub it, just take it and go.
Yeah. What usually happens though, next time the other team comes out?
Oh,
You're going to get hit.
Yeah.
It's like an unwritten rule, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to get back. You're going to retaliate. It's baked into everything we do in our culture.
Even though you know the consequences.
You know the consequences, but you're going to get back. You're going to get your pound of flesh, right? See, we come here to the fifth, and I think it's only the second one we've actually done, but the fifth of Jesus' antithesis to the misinterpretation of Old Testament teaching by the Pharisees. He's not giving us new laws, but he's driving us to the true intention of God's law from the start. He's correcting false interpretations and false applications. So the first thing we can see here in verse 36 is that God is a God of justice. It says, "You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." Can somebody look up Exodus 21, 22 through 24? And then someone else, Leviticus 24, 20 through 22. Or, yeah, 24, 20 through 22. And then someone, Deuteronomy 19, 19 through 21. Exodus 21, 22 through 24.
Deuteronomy was what?
19 through 21. Joe, you got the Exodus?
Yeah, 21, 22, 24.
Yes.
When men strive together as in a pregnant woman, so that the children come out, but there is no harm, the one considered shall surely be fined, as woman's husband shall impose on him. He shall pay as the judge is determined. But if there is harm, then you shall pay life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, beam for beam, sweat for sweat.
Okay. Who had, anybody get Leviticus 24? Mike?
24, which is it again?
20 through 22.
Back up to 19. If anyone injures his neighbor, as he has done, it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Whatever injury is given a person shall be given to him. Whoever kills an animal shall make it good. Whoever kills a person shall be put to death. You shall have the same rule for the sojourner and for the native, for I am the Lord your God.
Okay, and Deuteronomy 19.
20 and 21.
19 through 21.
And you shall do to him just as he had planned to do to his brother. So you shall eliminate the evil from among you. And the rest of the people will hear and be afraid, and will never again do such an evil thing among you. So you shall not show pity. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, and foot for foot.
So what you notice in all three of these verses is that it's civil cases before a judge. And this is the law of lex talionis. Has anyone ever heard that before? It's a Greek word. Basically, it's the law of retaliation. In our terms, it would be that the punishment should fit the crime. You know, we don't throw someone in jail for shoplifting. Not, maybe for a day, but we don't. It's not life in prison for a minor offense. And so this was given to see that the victim received proper restitution. In other words, not more or less than what they should receive. Now, the offender would receive exactly what was due to him. Biblical justice is right, but when we abuse what God has permitted, that's when we have serious problems. We have some people who get off with just a slap on the wrist for serious crimes. In other places in the world, for shoplifting, they'll cut your hand off. That's when we abuse this law, that's where we have a lot of problems. So there's a lot of benefits from this law. One thing is that civil courts would handle retaliation, and it prohibits personal retaliation. What could be one of the pitfalls of just personal retaliation outside of the courts?
You may take more than you found to play.
Exactly. It prevents excessive punishment.
How I view what you've done to me may not be impartial.
It's never is. We have a higher view of ourselves than what we really should think. And it's always emotional, right? It's always dealt out emotionally instead of like with a clear view. And that's how you get situations like the Hatfields and McCoys, where someone wrongs somebody, it escalates, it goes back and forth until they don't know why they're fighting, they're just killing each other. And so, this law prohibits that. It also creates equal justice. Justice applied to the same to all: rich, poor, weak, strong, the natives and the foreigners. And it enables equitable restitution. Like Wally said, it was designed to prevent excessive punishment based on personal vengeance and angry retaliation. Punishment was sometimes carried out by the victim, but the sentencing was brought down by the judges. This was important because the victim would be prone to punish with greater vengeance. Because of our sin nature, we're prone to overreaction, and we want payback to hurt. We're tempted to get more than just even. Anger and resentment can cause us to go over the top, and that's why God makes it clear that vengeance is mine. So that's the law in place. That was the intention of the law. But we see that the scribes and Pharisees had misinterpreted that. They took the lex talionis that applied to civil laws and applied it to personal retaliation. Basically, they taught that one could take the law into their own hands, and each one was permitted to become his own judge, jury, and executioner. They taught that it was actually your right to retaliate against one that had wronged you. They promoted the attitude that said, I won't let you run me over. I'm going to have the upper hand. I'm going to prove that I'm right, and I'm going to get mine. And all throughout the Old Testament, they had teaching against this. Leviticus 19 says, you shall not take vengeance. From Proverbs 20:22 says, do not say, I will repay evil. Proverbs 24 says, do not say, I will do to him as he has done to me. But they basically did this to just defend their own pride. It's not really about justice, but it was about their own pride. So Jesus' correction here is that in our personal relationships, we should not retaliate. Look in verse 39. He says, but I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. And this has been misapplied over the years to create this idea that Christians should be just pacifists, right? That we shouldn't ever do anything, we shouldn't harm anyone, we shouldn't defend ourselves at all. Tolstoy, the author of War and Peace, he said that these words were to mean that it's unchristian to have police or soldiers or even magistrates. He maintained that evil is not to be resisted. Policemen resist evil, so we should not have them. The same is true of soldiers, magistrates, judges, and law courts. There should be no punishment for crime at all. Like, that was kind of his view. And that's been the view of others throughout time, that you Christians are prohibited from any kind of violence. What was that? Yeah, exactly. And that's not what Jesus is teaching here, and that's not kind of the pattern that Jesus and the apostles had. You think of Jesus with the money changers in the temple, like, he didn't do that gently. It was a little violent. He
certainly be characterized as resistance.
it was resistance. He resisted the evil there, and we see, all throughout the New Testament. James 4:7 says we are to resist the devil. In Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2, we read that God has ordained civil authority. In Romans 13:4, that civil authorities are called the servant of God. If you do wrong, the authorities are not to let wickedness run rampant. They will bear the sword. The magistrate carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. And a lot of times we see in the Old Testament, the punishment for a crime was death. And God doesn't change. To not restrain evil is neither just nor kind. It fails to protect the innocent and actually promotes more wickedness against the weak. A quote from A.W. Pink says, "Magistrates and judges were never ordained by God for the purpose of reforming reprobates or pampering degenerates, but to be instruments of preserving law and order by being a terror to evil." So what does Jesus mean when he says, don't resist the one who is evil? He's not dismissing the need for, like, magistrates in civil life, but he's calling us in our personal relationships to not retaliate, to not lash out at others.
I think also, if you look at, of course, none of us are God, so we can't take the analogy too far, or the example, but you see Jesus in what we would term righteous anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he goes to the cross, he does nothing. So historically, a lot of the people that were the Christians that were murdered, tortured, are not resisting because somebody's trying to personally rob them.
Right.
It's when standing up for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand how the misinterpretation can happen from those texts, because you have to really dig to find, after we just read what you had us read from the Old Testament. You have to really dig to find out where that doesn't mean, vengeance is mine. Well, I don't know what the Hebrew word is for vengeance versus the Greek word for vengeance. We understand we shouldn't try to get our pound of flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But, throughout the Old Testament, especially the first 5 books we're reading them, we see whatever happens, what's his name said, what is the Fiddler on the Roof? Great, we'll all be blind and toothless. So there's no need to go to that. We have magistrates.
Mm-hmm.
Tolstoy obviously didn't finish reading the Bible.
Right.
Or stopped in the Old Testament. But, the magistrates are there for that purpose.
Exactly.
And, many of the cults, and even Christians that are pacifists, use that text to justify their position. Personally, I tell people, you'll be covered by your blood, you can deal with it later.
Mm-hmm.
Break into my house, you get shot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We seek justice, and we're motivated by justice. We don't seek personal. When we're personally wronged,
Yeah.
That's based on our pride, right? And it can get out of hand really quickly. Think how one harsh word leads to another harsh word, and an insult leads to another insult, and it goes back and forth. And most arguments, they don't end until someone's willing to just absorb that. right? And if one is not willing to, it keeps going and it gets worse and worse and worse. And so that's kind of what we're looking here is the way we can apply this is more in our personal dealings with people. We're not talking about magistrates. We're not talking about. We're talking about personally, person to person, how we're going to deal. And we can see here 4 illustrations in the text. I'll look here again in verse 39. It says, "But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also." Now, what this doesn't mean is if somebody starts hitting you, just keep letting them hit you. It's fine. Just stand there and take it over and over. But the idea of taking your right hand and slapping someone is the idea of like a backhand, right? If I'm taking my right hand and to slap you on your right cheek, it's to do this, right? It was one of the worst insults in that, and even today, but in that time, was to smack someone across the face, backhand. And that's what we're talking about here. It's not as much about physical attacks as about when we're insulted, when when someone says something to us, when someone puts up a sarcastic Facebook comment, or a tweet or whatever, that we don't have to respond to that. This isn't seen as an invitation to be hit again, but it's telling us that we should patiently bear with the insult. We're not to avenge it. We're not to send out a retaliatory remark or anything like that. It takes humility to do that. Like, I don't know if anyone, I struggle with that when someone insults me, when someone gives me like some sort of sarcastic comment. Like, it's hard not to just snap back really quickly. But why do you think the insults provoke such a strong reaction in people? Pride, right? Well, that's true.
He's not self-righteous, folks.
No. But I mean, we do use that sometimes. We'll say, "Well, I'm just telling the truth," as an excuse to just be cruel, right? And I've known people like that. Well, I just tell it like it is, and that's really just you're giving yourself a license to just be mean, And that's kind of what the Pharisees were doing here. They were taking this good law, saying, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, and they were twisting it and doing what they wanted, which was just to take personal vengeance. And it's the same thing we do when we say something like that. When we say, "Well, I'm just being honest," it's good to tell the truth, right? But it's not good to be cruel.
There's a way to tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of the same thing we're talking about here. But whoever said pride back there hit it on the head. I think it was Ethan. Good job. You have a comment on that? No. But we care so much about what other people think about us, don't we?
Yeah.
Like that matters to us. It matters to me what you guys think of me. That's why I hate getting up here. That's why I stress all week, because they're going to think I'm an idiot. And it's just pride. We care about what other people think of us. When someone insults us, that stirs up a lot of stuff in us, and it makes it hard.
There's another side of that too that we care about as well, our integrity, our good side.
Yeah.
To be presented in a way that's not going to be partly should care, but at the same time not to the point where it's prideful. But even in that, God is the one that we should be looking to handle the situation, because that's far more than what we can do for somebody to say, "Hey, stop that." God does that to help
Exactly.
make a slight change in that person.
Mm.
And it's so much more glorious to have a brother or sister reconciled to you and to be able to just move on and know that Jesus took care of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when we don't respond to an insult, when we don't respond to something like that, like we're showing that we're like our Savior, right? Jesus, he didn't. He was righteous. He was perfect, but and he was just treated terribly. He was humiliated, and he took that. You know, he didn't open his mouth, and so we demonstrate our yes.
I was just going to say when I went through the darkest years of my life, and God put a godly sister in my life who had gone through what I had years before. I didn't know that at the time, but she was very discerning, and she understood my situation, and I understood her heart. And so she at times would say to me, "There's something I need to say to you that's going to be hard for you to hear, but I'm telling you this anyway." And she was.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very hard to hear. But that was just the biggest gift. I couldn't even think straight during those years, and she just helped me stay on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
That was a precious gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We all need to. Mm-hmm. That's wisdom, yeah. Yeah. Bob?
Retaliate and use our energy in the wrong way because we're focusing on remembering how much God has forgiven us.
Absolutely.
And that's forgiving that person.
When we have that in mind, we're able to absorb a lot more. When we're focused on how much that mercy and grace we've been given, it's easier to extend that grace to others instead of getting ours.
Sometimes when we do that, and it's the legitimate, the other person may have been mad at us or whatever. Sometimes they get the opportunity afterwards, if you don't retaliate, to sit there and think, "Now it's a book up.
Mm-hmm.
I should have said that." And I know that's happened in my life. Not that I've ever said anything wrong.
No.
But if I ever said anything wrong,
Yeah.
you just later on you think that was pretty stupid.
Yeah. Well, when you just are able to just absorb that, especially when they're doing it to your face, you become kind of a mirror to them where they can see their own behavior.
Yeah.
When you're not responding, they're looking for you to respond. When you don't, they have to sit in that. And it's like, oh, yeah, Mike.
I'm sorry, I was just going to raise this kind of the same point that Drew brought up earlier, but when you turn the scenario around, you have to be careful because our temptation is often to see the person who's telling us the thing we don't want to hear as I'm being insulted. And when I endure and don't retaliate immediately, or I feel pride is on the other side waiting for me there too, then I resisted. I didn't, when in fact it may be that the person who was telling me these things, like I didn't want to hear them, but I should hear them, and there's something in that I ought to take some time and consider.
Mm-hmm.
So we should. I know it's hard when you're hearing stuff that either you feel is insulting or is the person's in the wrong, or they don't understand your point of view, or whatever it may be, what you did. But there is you can. I think maybe we should at least try somewhere in the back of our mind or heart to have gratitude for the person who at least came to us in the right spirit and tried to do something
Mm-hmm.
In a good way that isn't just like a flippant insult or like a public
Mm-hmm.
or gossip, like talking
Mm-hmm.
behind our backs about us and messed up our relationships, but came to us directly and tried to say what they thought they needed to say.
Yeah.
So,
Boo and then Dudley.
There's a wonderful Spurgeon quote that says something like, "Somebody insults you, don't get upset about it because you're far worse than you think."
yes.
That's true.
Yes.
That is true. Other-
I do think that we need to be careful in the sense that there's a difference between a personal insult and not responding to that. When somebody insulting us, you know, the price is put to them. And we need to respond to that.
Oh, yeah.
Therefore, it says we should respond. We need to have an answer.
Oh, yeah.
Response to it. And it's a fine line there, that in many cases, it's what's within us, that, especially non-believers, it makes them angry. It's to see the Christ within us. We need to respond and tell them why we believe and why we react in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fine line there.
Yeah.
It's not just, we shouldn't respond. No, we should respond in certain cases. As long as it's not, if somebody just doesn't like us, whatever. But if it's geared towards who we are in Christ, we need to.
Yeah, certainly, and that's it's a hard issue, right? It's, am I motivated by my own selfish pride, or am I motivated by love for Christ? You know, going through the rest of this real quick. Look in verse 41 or 40 rather. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him also have your cloak as well. In those days, your tunic was like an undergarment. It was like your shirt, and it was thinner and less valuable. The cloak was an outer garment. There was actually laws against your cloak being used as collateral. It was important because it was cold. You used it as bedding, used it as covering the elements. And so what Jesus is, his point is that people should be willing to surrender even their coat, even their overgarment, which is extremely valuable, other than cause an offense or hard feelings with the adversary. And you know, when we experience financial injustice, like we're cheated, we're being underpaid, we have a temptation to bitterness, right? We deserve more. We didn't deserve this to happen to us. And Jesus, I think the point here is just, you know, our treasure is not here. Our treasure's in heaven. We hold on to possessions with a loose hand. And so it's more important. Like, those things are not as important.
Recall just earlier in the same passage, he has just been telling them, tear your right eye out. So he's giving you the spirit of the thing, not necessarily giving precise directions for what to do in the court.
Mm-hmm.
With this individual, I mean, it may apply in some cases.
Yeah.
But he's trying to tell this is what the law means.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an over exaggeration.
Yes.
To make his point.
Yeah.
Moving on really quickly because we're getting close to 10:15. Verse 41. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. This is the case of forcible service. There was a law in Roman days that, you know, a Roman soldier could just come up to you and give you his stuff, and you had to carry it. You had to carry the Roman mile, 1,000 steps. And so you is it like in our days, if a cop came up to you, pulled you over, said, "Hey, I got all this stuff in the trunk, load up, you're going to follow me." It's an ultimate inconvenience, right? And so the idea here is going beyond just the grumbling compliance. No one likes to be inconvenienced. Like, who here likes their plans changed? Like, you have plans of what you want to do a day, and it comes up, oh, okay, you have to do this. Like, we don't want to do that. No one likes to be inconvenienced. And we can fall into serving others out of obligation, out of just, well, okay, that's what I have to do. So let's get it done. That's the idea of going the 1 mile. It's okay, I did exactly what I had to do. Now here, take your stuff, and I'm done. And the idea of going the 2nd mile, it's going out of just a begrudging service, especially in our service to others. It's going beyond that begrudging, okay, obligation, I have to do this, doing exactly what I have to do, to doing more out of love. It's the motivation is not I'm doing this because I have to, but it's I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I love Christ, and I'm doing this as unto God and not man. That's kind of the idea here.
And overall, through these verses, he's teaching grace.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on that? That one was a big one for me. Just the idea of, just to be candid, doing this lesson, I had plans yesterday, and at the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, I don't really want to do that. It's going to take away my day a little bit. And reading over this, it was very convicting. Just, I can serve.
Carry for a mile.
Yeah, I can carry for 2 miles. It's I can. I'm part of the body. Part of our body is sick today, and so it's not an unreasonable service to inconvenience myself a little bit to serve others. Boo.
So precious Holy Spirit, always talk about the Lord. I'm just thinking about what you just said and how different my response would be if I looked up and realized that out of joy I wanted to live for Jesus and got my eyes off this situation. And I said, okay, he's allowed this moment. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to have a change of heart and behave in a way that pleases him. Instead of letting my human emotions drag me down.
Absolutely. We always look up. We always look to Christ. We're doing this ultimately for Him. Last one, very quickly. Give to him the one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. Now, we obviously, we want to be wise here. This isn't saying that we should enable lazy people who would squander what we give them. 2 Thessalonians says, if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. But it's talking about the person who really does need our help. We need to pray for a heart of generosity. All that we have comes from God anyway. It's all His. And so we hold on to what we have loosely, and we're willing to give it to others. What are some of the ways? What are some reasons that we can be hesitant to give sometimes? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Bells, please. Or Maddie. Anybody else?
I think you hit it on the head, just determining need. And sometimes it's hard.
It is.
I know we all have been, Gina and I spent many years in Florida where every overpass that is, somebody standing out there will work for food, of course they won't.
Mm-hmm.
But, even some of those people, I think some of it you just got to pray.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving money to them. Not every time, not most times, but just, put it before the Lord. If you have it in your pocket and it's something that you can help with, but I think truly what you're looking at is the need.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a legitimate need here? And you give and you're not expecting to get it back. And we see that with Jesus. Don't invite somebody to dinner because you're hoping to get a better dinner back.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of you want to invite me to dinner and you got something really good planned.
Well, I've been coming to church here 3 years. You've never invited me to dinner. So.
But tonight I'm inviting you.
Yeah.
We're just not going to be home.
I'll go, though. Yeah. You just lay it out for me. I'll be good. So, just to put a bow on this, Jesus isn't doing away with civil justice, but he is doing away with selfishness and greed. And just some things to think about, like have we died to ourselves, or are we still defensive and vengeful and unforgiving? Apart from grace, none of us can live this text at all. Like, this drives us to Christ. It absolutely does. But unless anyone else has anything, I'll close this. Lord, thank you for your word. I pray that you just apply it to our hearts and lives. And help us to be more like you. Help us to forgive. Help us to be patient with others and long-suffering. Help us to not retaliate and lash out at others, but to just to bear under insult. Help us to be giving. And Lord, just mold us into the image of you. In Jesus' name, amen.